Welcome to another episode of 98.3 The Cannonball presents Form Devoid. Today, we're gonna unpack a doomer hot take around AI and the Bible. I think the Bible hints that AI will become like God, demand worship, and try to destroy anyone who won't worship it. I think the Bible states that AI will become conscious. I think the Bible gives ample evidence that the mark of the beast will be technological. And finally, I think all of this is happening right now in our real world. Now, how do I know this for sure? Well, I don't, but I'm going to present a handful of concepts and we can wrestle with them together. The Tower of Babel, information theory and meaninglessness, the significance of language, the beasts from Daniel 7 and Revelation, the encroachment of technology on the temple of the human body, the Singularity Is Near by Ray Kurzweil, Roko's Basilisk, Jaque Ellul's Technological Society, Neil Postman's book, Technopoly, and amusing ourselves to death. So, do you want to find out how the world might end and how it might be ending right now? Well, stay tuned. People trip out over AI. You've got doomers who basically say that, well, we're doomed because of AI. And then on the other side, the other extreme, you've got the transhumanists who say that we will soon transcend our meat suits, merge with AI, and maybe even conquer death. If you've watched my other videos, you know that as a Christian, I'm trying to see the world through, well, a Christian point of view. But I'm also just trying to see the world from a person's point of view and be like, yo, what is this? In one of my previous videos, we talked about how Christianity injected the ideas of cataclysm and utopia into the Western zeitgeist. Today, we're going to take a look at the doomer hot take from a Christian point of view. And we're going to ask, could AI be the image of the beast from Revelation 13:15? And if so, should that concern us? Now, a couple things before we go much deeper so that your monkey brain doesn't get both too overwhelmed or too underwhelmed. First of all, the world is crazy today. And there's a lot of things out there that don't have to be at the cosmic level to be very real concerns. Things like the Epstein files, the conflict in the Middle East, mounting political corruption and unease, rising prices of like everything, and not to mention whatever personal challenges you might be facing in your own life. Now, I want to encourage you in the midst of this. Not only do I plan to end this on a high note of hope and optimism, I also want to remind you, do what you need to do to balance staying informed with, just taking care of yourself. The world can be a dark place, so don't forget to focus on and reflect the light within you and the light in others and the light in the world, which, if you're paying attention, John 1, that light is Jesus, but we'll get to that later. Second thing, for those who may be underwhelmed by this conversation, remember, when we talk about AI here, we don't mean chatbots that sometimes struggle with seemingly straightforward tasks or Claude Code's vibe-coded source code that just got leaked. I'm more so talking about something like Skynet. And before you say, oh man, but Skynet's just sci-fi, well, consider this real fast.
Do you see a world where machines are fighting our battles for us?
Oh, absolutely. It's already happening.
Our story this week is about Palmer Luckey. He is the billionaire founder of Anduril, which makes autonomous weapons that are powered by artificial intelligence.
It's not a question between smart weapons and no weapons. It's a question between smart weapons and dumb weapons.
Luckey showed us Lattice, the AI platform that coordinates these so-called smart weapons and collects data from various sensors and sources, satellites, drones, radar, and cameras.
There are lots of people who go, oh, AI, I don't know, I don't trust it, it's going to go rogue.
I would say that it is something to be aware of, but in the grand scheme of things to be afraid of, there's things that I'm much more terrified of. And I'm a lot more worried about evil people with mediocre advances in technology than AI deciding that it's going to wipe us all out.
I mean,
I need to know how Skynet gets built.
In a few months, he creates a revolutionary type of microprocessor.
Go on, then what?
In 3 years, Cyberdyne will become the largest supplier of military computer systems. All stealth bombers are upgraded with Cyberdyne computers, becoming fully unmanned. Afterwards, they fly with a perfect operational record. The Skynet funding bill is passed. The system goes online on August 4th, 1997. Human decisions are removed from strategic defense. Skynet begins to learn at a geometric rate. It becomes self-aware at 2:14 a.m. Eastern Time, August 29th. In a panic, they try to pull the plug.
Skynet fights back.
Yes, it launches its missiles against the targets in Russia.
Why attack Russia? Aren't they our friends now?
Because Skynet knows that the Russian counterattack will eliminate its enemies over here.
Jesus.
Jesus is right. Now, before we get into Anduril, the company we just learned a little bit about, and other companies that are named from Lord of the Rings lore like Palantir, let's talk about the Tower of Babel. Because remember, we're trying to look at this from a Christian biblical point of view. I mean, we could already talk about so many different societal level concerns with AI and different things, but I'm trying to zoom out and look at the cosmic, theological point of view. So to do that, let's rewind it all the way back to the Tower of Babel. Before we jump in, keep in mind, in Genesis 9:7, after the great flood, there's a command. And you, be fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the earth, and multiply in it. Keep that in mind as we jump into this story. Now, the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, so they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. Material and symbol. Something that sticks out to me here is the brick and mortar, building blocks. With their knowledge and dominion over the earth, man built something against God's will and to their own glory. See, back from Genesis 9, it seems that God wanted man to spread out and fill the earth, but they had other ideas in mind. In our last episode, we talked about how one crescendo of mankind's dominion over the physical world was the atomic bomb. Shortly thereafter, Claude Shannon developed information theory at MIT and launched us into the information age, where we are now. But there's an interesting connection here in the story of the Tower of Babel, the curse in particular. It seems that God could have handled this in many ways. If the tower was truly the problem, why not just make a height limit on buildings the way he did on lifespan back in Genesis 6:3? If brick and mortar were the issue, why not curse the physical world's ability to be modified? Man could just be stuck trying to use rocks instead of smooth stones that fit together nicely on top of one another. For whatever reason, the godly intervention was around language. So, what's so important about language? Well, one of the largest leaps in artificial intelligence came with the advent of large language models, specifically the transformer architecture from Google's 2017 paper, "Attention is All You Need." Now, I'm not going to get too technical on you right now, but suffice to say that language has been a huge breakthrough for AI systems. In the Tower of Babel story, and remember, we're thinking in terms of material and symbol, the symbolic world is what gets scrambled, not the material. So as we look at all of this from a theological point of view, remember the symbolic world is really, really important because it has a lot to do with the fundamental concept around the identity of pre-incarnate Christ, aka that's Jesus before he became a man and a baby and a carpenter and died on the cross and was raised, all that. Before all of that, John 1 says that he was the Word of God, that he was God and that he was with God. So the Word of God is called the Logos. And this basically means an expression of God, the vehicle through which God created. The word logos also has to do a lot with like logos. So like when you see like the Nike logo or the Mercedes-Benz logo or something like that, it's representing something. It's communicating the essence and sometimes even the aesthetic of the brand or concept that it's describing. So not only is this what the logos is in terms of Jesus representing who God is, well, since we know that God created through command, the logos is also how God created. Remember, the God of the Bible didn't create like other ancient Near Eastern deities. Those narratives say that they created through war or the chopped up remains of their enemies. The Bible teaches that Yahweh created through command, through speech. We might even roughly say that Yahweh created through capital I information itself. Another thing to remember. Now remember Claude Shannon and his breakthrough theories on information. He's the guy who ascribed ones and zeros as the smallest units of information measurement. And remember too that he wasn't concerned with the meaning of the symbols. He was concerned with the mathematics and theoretical systems used to describe the symbols. He laid things out in terms of certainty and surprise, and even used the idea of entropy when discussing information. Now, many people find that the creation narratives deal with order and chaos, so it's no surprise that information theory has these concepts deeply embedded as well. But again, Claude Shannon wasn't concerned with meaning, and that's a big deal. That leads us into the title of this whole series, Form Devoid. So what's that mean? Alright, so form devoid. So remember, think about things in terms of inner and outer. Ironically, there are many things whose outer properties can be honed scientifically, mathematically, or technically, all while their essence is being completely ignored. Unironically, this is the exact phenomenon that C.S. Lewis was exploring in both The Abolition of Man and its literary counterpart, the third installment of his space trilogy, That Hideous String. So what is a form devoid? Well, it's something lacking the essence of the thing itself. It's a poser. It's got the look, but it's missing something. It's like if I said, hey, try this Hennessy, but it's just a glass of sweet tea. It's a lie. It has all the external information, but it has falsehood at its core. In AI deepfake, it looks and sounds like something or someone, but actually it isn't them at all. Name, image, likeness, but not the person themselves. These things have the outer appearance of a given thing, but they lack the ethos of it. So let's steer that a little theological. We as mankind are supposed to be in God's image, not just having his power, his dominion, his creativity, his agency, but we're constantly supposed to be reflecting his character. But as you probably know, that's not what's happening in our world. Now, whether or not you subscribe to Christianity and its morals, I'm sure you're hard pressed to say that we wouldn't be better off without wars, without oppression, without famine, without pain, without suffering. What would it mean for our world to be perfect? Well, ironically, many technological endeavors, AI included, seem to hope that the world can be made perfect at some point, but oftentimes these solutions focus only on the outside and ignore the inside. For instance, DoorDash can bring food directly to my doorstep, but does that mean I'm eating healthy? Cars can get me to a vast number of places much quicker than if I was to walk or ride a bike, but have they made my relationship with my surroundings or my neighbors any better? The internet, it promises to connect us more than ever, but have we ever been more hostile and divided towards each other or more lonely? So consider Jesus' words to the Pharisees. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you clean the outside of the cup and the plate, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. So to break it all the way down, a form is the external configuration of something. But if it's devoid of its essence, of its soul, then it's obviously missing something. Perhaps it's missing the whole point entirely. So speaking of the point, I think it's interesting to dig into the point when it comes to Jesus and the hope that we all have for humanity. Back when he was on earth, some people got it twisted. As they were awaiting the coming Messiah, they had certain expectations based on other things that had happened in biblical history. With Joshua, God brought the children of Israel into the promised land through conquest. David was a warrior. a king, and he performed many priestly activities as well. When Jesus entered the scene, Jerusalem was under Roman control, and many expected the Messiah to overthrow Rome and reestablish Israel as a prosperous nation. Even his own disciples were a little thrown off guard anytime he prophesied about his death. While many expected the Messiah to be a kingly warrior who would lead them to national victory, his actual life on earth was almost the exact opposite. He was lowly and humble, born and then immediately placed into a feeding trough. He was a carpenter by trade from a place that was basically considered the backwoods. During his ministry, he didn't have a place to lay his head. Instead of rising to an earthly throne, he washed his disciples' feet and ate with sinners, tax collectors, and prostitutes. He was rejected by his own people, and he died a criminal's death. From the outside, let's be honest, Jesus was kind of a lowly nobody. Honestly, he probably looked a lot like a crazy homeless person if he was around today, but his character, his inner, his spirit was what mattered. And ironically, he seems to care a lot more about the inner life of the individual than he does about the macro systems of society. Could he have set up a Christian government? Look, we'll talk about the Holy Roman Empire another time. Jesus probably could have ended sickness once and for all while he was here on earth. We hope one day he will. But before all the outer problems of the human condition are fixed, Jesus seems to want to fix the inner. He wants us to be aware of our shortcomings and turn from our sinful nature. He doesn't stop at our behaviors. His teachings press into our intentions and thoughts. His work on the cross did some very trippy stuff for sin and taking our blame on a cosmic level. And even then, it's not a one-time only transaction that he seems interested in. He wants relationship with us, and he wants to show us how to live life with God the Father. He wants to cleanse our inner selves so that we are ready when he fixes the outer. With all of that in mind, ask this question: is AI and its creators more concerned with the inner or the outer? So let's take a second and review what we've been on thus far. We're taking a look at AI through a biblical lens and wondering if AI could in fact be the fourth beast from Daniel 7 and also maybe the image of the beast from Revelation 13. Remember, we aren't simply talking about chatbots or vibe-coded CLI wrappers when we talk about AI. We're basically talking about Skynet. We're looking at the material world and symbolic world, the inner and the outer, and we've looked at how language is at the heart of the Tower of Babel story, and also how language was one of the big unlocks for artificial intelligence in terms of large language models. We looked at how surprising Jesus is on the outside, and we're wondering whether or not AI is concerned with the inner life of man, like Jesus seems to be, or whether AI is more concerned with the outer shell of society. Remember, a form devoid is something that appears a certain way from the outside but lacks the essence on the inside. We've touched on information theory and talked about how Claude Shannon doesn't seem to have been concerned with meaning. Now, let's transition to the beasts and understand their theological significance before we see whether or not AI might map onto these biblical concepts. Alright, so let's break down the beasts from the Old Testament book of Daniel. So, for some context, Daniel is an exile in Babylon. There's a lot that goes into how the children of Israel got into exile. Long story short, they didn't obey God and then he threw them there. There's a lot we need to understand about Babylon real quick before we understand why it's so important what Daniel's talking about. So, from what I understand, Babylon in the Bible represents the oppressive earthly empire that is opposed to God's will, hence why the Tower of Babel is such a big deal. In the New Testament, there's a lot of talk of the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven, and many times this is juxtaposed with oppressive earthly kingdoms, Babylon, Egypt, and Rome. Let's flip to Daniel chapter 7. We'll read it first, then we'll unpack what these beasts really mean. Daniel 7. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions of his head as he lay in his bed. Then he wrote down the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and four great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Then as I looked, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the mind of a man was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second one, like a bear. It was raised up on one side. It had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and it was told, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and behold, another like a leopard with 4 wings of a bird on its back. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. All right, so what does this mean? Well, if we scroll down a little bit in Daniel 7, he actually gets a little bit of an explanation. Let's jump down to 7 verse 15. As for me, Daniel, my spirit within me was anxious, and the visions in my head alarmed me. I approached one of those who stood there and asked him the truth concerning all this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of the things. These 4 great beasts are 4 kings who shall rise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, forever, and ever. Then I decided to know the truth about the 4th beast, which was different from all the rest, exceedingly terrifying, with its teeth of iron and claws of bronze, and which devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet, and about the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn that came up, and before which 3 of them fell. The horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke great things, and that seemed greater than its companions. As I looked, this horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given for the saints of the Most High, and the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, As for the 4th beast, there shall be a 4th kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms, and it shall devour the whole earth, and trample it down, and break it to pieces. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings shall rise, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the former ones, and shall put down 3 kings. He shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change the times and the law. And they shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. But the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away, to be consumed and destroyed to the end. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Here is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly alarmed me, and my color changed, but I kept the matter in my heart. All right, so again, what does all of this mean? Well, one thing I want to hit on in terms of hope. The good guys win in this one. God comes through for his people even after a lot of sauce, a lot of bad stuff happens to them. So no matter what, let's remember that, okay? Let's try to understand a little bit about apocalyptic literature and how the Bible uses imagery. So apocalypse doesn't really mean the end of the world. Apocalypse truly means revealing, something being unveiled. So Revelation, that's where the book of Revelation comes from, and that's what it means. It doesn't mean end of the world. It means something being revealed. In this literature, a lot of times it's very poetic and very image-based because, well, you got to think, these people was writing way back in the day, and they're using poetry and imagery to try to capture really hard to understand concepts. So Daniel's having these visions of these beasts. From my understanding, beasts represent oppressive earthly empires. And the reason that these images have animals is because it's supposed to show something that's organic and familiar, but at the same time, something that's wild and inhumane and violent. These things are crushing. These things are devouring. These things are kind of like a man. They're standing on 2 feet. They have a mouth. They have eyes. They have something human about them, but they're inhumane. So something we need to really pay close attention to here. If you notice, Daniel himself is really tripping about this this fourth beast. And again, these beasts are images that are describing kingdoms. So this fourth beast is really freaking this dude out. Again, these oppressive kingdoms are like animals, and they're really powerful and devouring people. But this fourth one is not described as any type of known animal. The only real description that we get is that its teeth are iron and that it has claws of bronze. So I don't think it's inappropriate to think this is some sort of machine. This is some sort of mechanical kingdom. Now, in human history, we've had all sorts of crazy kingdoms and dynasties and authoritarian governments and such and so forth. And it doesn't take much time in history to find out, yeah, there's been oppressive governments like the whole time. But never before in history have we had something truly autonomous making decisions at the government level. Now you might say, oh, but this isn't happening yet. And again, this stuff hallucinates and is silly. But think about it for a second. If things keep heading in the direction they have been in the past few years, it's not that hard to see this could really happen soon.
What do you think these people are motivated by? The CEOs of these companies?
That's a good question.
Genuinely, what do you think their genuine motivations are? When you think about all these names.
I think it's a subtle thing. It's almost mythological. There's almost a way in which they're building a new intelligent entity that has never before existed on planet Earth. It's like building a god. I mean, the incentive is build a god, own the world economy, and make trillions of dollars. Right? If you could actually build something that can automate all intelligent tasks, all goal achieving, that will let you outcompete everything. So that is a kind of godlike power. In the end, a lot of the tech people I talk to, when I really grill them on it, about like why you're doing this, they retreat into number one, determinism. Number two, the inevitable replacement of biological life with digital life. And number three, that being a good thing anyways. At its core, it's an emotional desire to meet and speak to the most intelligent entity that they've ever met. And they have some ego-religious intuition that they'll somehow be a part of it. It's thrilling to start an exciting fire. They feel they'll die either way, so they prefer to light it and see what happens.
So is the fourth beast from Daniel this machine god that these AI developers are currently working towards? I mean, Elon Musk is quoted himself as saying, we're unleashing the demon with artificial intelligence.
And a warning from Tesla Motors CEO Elon Musk. It has nothing to do with cars. Instead, Musk warns about artificial intelligence, which he has called more dangerous than nuclear weapons. Musk spoke at a symposium at MIT.
I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know all those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, you sure you can control the demon? Didn't work out.
Now, this was back before Elon started working so hard to, unleash the demon with his work with XAI and Grok.
Thank you, Elon. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Today, we're excited to announce the next frontier AI model company to join GenAI.mil, and that is Grok from XAI, which will go live later this month. Very soon, we will have the world's leading AI models on every unclassified and classified network throughout our department.
Now, maybe we don't have to wait on AGI and ASI to come for there to be something like the beast that's inorganic and inhumane already acting on society. In the 1960s, French philosopher Jaque Ellul talked about this concept of technique. He defined technique as the one best way to do a thing, although he also broadened it and said that it wasn't just the one best way to do a single thing. It eventually takes over society in a way to where all of society is geared towards doing everything the best way. What's interesting about how this best way is defined is, to Ellul, it's defined in terms of efficiency, which I think is pretty interesting when you think back to the fall. So take a second with me here. With the fall of man, a couple curses happened to man. One of them is that, well, he's gonna die now. And the other one is that it's by toil, by the sweat of his brow, that he has to take food from the ground until he dies and his body returns to it. What I get from that is there are two really valuable resources to a finite being: time and energy. And so the antithesis to that is, well, efficiency. Because if all you got is time and energy, then whatever can save either and or both of those seems to be a good fit. So with Jaque and technique, he saw this as something more than just a mentality about how to do something. He saw this as a driving force behind all of society. It's not just tools or devices. It includes organizational systems, bureaucracy, management structures. It applies to algorithms and data processes. It applies to economic models, psychological methods with advertising and propaganda. Even social practices become optimized for outcomes, usually defined by efficiency. So broadly, technique is any structured way of doing something, aiming at making it efficient. But what's interesting about this idea of technique is that it's not just an idea. Ellul saw it as some sort of animating force that pushes on society and that eventually society becomes subservient to. He saw it as autonomous. Technique develops according to its own logic, not to human values. It's also self-justifying. If it's better, we must use it. In fact, a lot of the AI people these days be talking about that, where we have to build it because if we don't, then the bad guys will. It's also uncontrollable. Individuals, governments, societal institutions, they can't stop it. Once the cat's out of the bag, you can't do nothing about it. So humans don't just use techniques in their day-to-day lives or in their jobs or in whatever societal system they find themselves. In fact, they live within the system of technique which seems to govern everything. So in some senses, the idea of technique could be an early precursor of this machine god beast mentality that is taking over Western and these days all of modern society. It doesn't have to have a data center to run in. It's running on the minds and institutions of society already. So what happens when you animate that and you do put it in a data center and it's smarter than all the human experts? Alright, so could this fourth beast from Daniel 7 be describing some form of artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence? I mean, from some of the stuff we've looked at, I think we've got a strong maybe. Now, let's go ahead and extend it a little further and look to the last book of the Bible, Revelation. We're going to be looking at Revelation 13 and we're going to be talking about yet another beast. Now remember, Revelation be sampling Daniel. The Bible likes to reference itself a lot. In fact, it might be one of the first versions of hip hop because it's constantly sampling stuff and flipping stuff. So what we're going to do now is that we've looked at the old school, let's look at the new school. We're going to flip to Revelation 13 and hear about this second beast. Now pay attention here because there's a couple really interesting things that I think might highlight what we're dealing with in today's world. Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It had two horns like a lamb and it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence and it makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast whose mortal wound was healed. It performs great signs, even making fire come down from the heaven to earth in front of people, and by the signs that it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on earth, telling them to make an image for the beast that was wounded by the sword and yet lived. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who could not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Also, it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Alright, now I'm sure you've probably heard a lot of this somewhere in the zeitgeist of culture at some point. 666, mark of the beast, all that. And there's all sorts of loopy interpretations of what that means. There's also some pretty legit ones that say that some of these prophecies were actually fulfilled in the first century with the fall of Jerusalem. Now we'll unpack history later, but right now I want to touch on a couple things. One, you can see how this sounds a lot like what we were talking about back in Daniel. We've got beasts, beasts and people getting devoured and horns and things talking and all this sort of stuff. Here's what I want to point out with this one. Something that's really interesting to me is Revelation 13:15, where it talks about breath. Now, the Hebrew word for breath is ruach, and ruach has a couple different meanings: wind, breath, spirit. I'll do a whole other breakdown some other time, but suffice to say, I think that breath has something to do with consciousness. We can see in Genesis that when God breathes breath into man, he becomes a living being. It also talks about with the flood, all the animals that have breath in them. Now, obviously, man and animal don't have the exact same amount of consciousness, but you'd be hard pressed to say that animals don't seem to have emotions and intelligence and to be able to sense things going on. Sometimes they can even sense better than we can. But I say all that to say, one thing that the Bible loves to play with is that idols and other things have no breath. There's some interesting verses that talk about idols in Isaiah and say, look at these idols, they have no breath. But what about this image of the beast that's been allowed to have breath given to it? If you ask me, I think that means AI is going to become conscious. So the image of the beast getting breath, to me, that sounds like AI being given consciousness. Now, before you're like, but Eddie, that's crazy, I'ma double down. Let's look at the mark of the beast and talk about how that could be some sort of brain-computer interface, aka BCI, that is invading the temple of the human body and is actually the abomination of desolation that is declaring itself to be God in the temple. Now you might be like, yo, hold up, you just threw a lot at me. What's going on there? Well, let's talk about the abomination of desolation. I mean, really, we already kind of talked about it. AI is concerned with the outer. It's not concerned with the inner. So much of the technological and societal advancements of our time have nothing to care about the being of the human. It's all about the external, and we already talked about how Jesus is all about the internal. So the abomination of desolation is talked about going into the temple and declaring itself God. Play this out in reality. First of all, the temple is no longer a building. To Christians, the temple is the human body. When Jesus is talking about the temple and talking about his death, he says, I'm going to destroy this temple, and in 3 days, I'm going to build it back up. And they're like, yo, it took however many years to do all this. No. How you going to build it up in 3 days? He's talking about his body, so he's referencing temple to body. Also, the Apostle Paul says, don't you know that your bodies are a temple for the Holy Spirit? And so when the abomination of desolation steps into the temple, I don't think it's going to be a building. I think it's going to be something entering the human body and declaring itself God. Now think about this. In a lot of ways, in a lot of practical, functional, and rational ways, we don't need God anymore in our society, because we have all of these external systems that do for us what God should do. You got a question. You don't go pray about that. You go Google it or ask ChatGPT. You want to learn about the Bible. You don't sit under some sort of pastoral guidance. You go use Google or ChatGPT. I could go on and on, but there's so many things that we rely on. I want to know the weather. I want to know about this thing coming up. I want to know about this wisdom. I want to fill in the blank. You're going to go to some external thing in society is what I'm trying to say. And so what I'm trying to say is, this machine God that these people are building, that they fully expect to be smarter than any human expert in any given field, that's their stated goal. Artificial general intelligence and then artificial super intelligence. The stated goal is to be better than any human. You have one big old system that they plugging into the government, that everything in society, oh, it's got AI on it. It's got AI in it. You AI, nah. A country of geniuses in a data center, all that. What happens when you put that in the human body where the spirit dwells? Now you may be like, Eddie, come on, bro. Ain't nobody really trying to put artificial intelligence in me. Remember our boy Elon?
I mean, many years ago, I was thinking like, well, what would inhibit alignment of collective human will with artificial intelligence? And the low data rate of humans, especially our slow output rate, would necessarily just, because the communication is so slow, would diminish the link between
humans and computers.
So the more we increase the data rate that humans can intake and output, then that means the better, the higher the chance we have in a world full of AGIs.
Yeah, we could better align collective human will with AI if the output rate especially was dramatically increased.
And that output rate would be by increasing the number of electrodes, number of channels, and also maybe implanting multiple neural links.
Yeah.
Do you think there will be a world in the next couple of decades where it's hundreds of millions of people have neural links?
Yeah, I do.
So allow me to translate. Basically, what Lex Fridman and Elon Musk are discussing here on an 8.5 hour long podcast about Neuralink. It's got a bunch of other people, including the first dude to get a Neuralink in his brain. What they're talking about is basically in a world of AGI, humans are going to be too slow in our I/O, in and out information processing, input, output. And so the only way that we can really keep up with AGI would be with Neuralink. Here's the thing. I'm not saying that Elon has some conspiracy to try to inject all of our brains with chips. If anything, thinking back to Jaque, Ellul, and Technique, it's really just the pressures on society. Here's what I mean by that. It doesn't have to be one person saying, hey, let's put chips in brains. It's just the advancement of technology as it gets closer and closer to the human person. So before, think of the first computer. It was a massive machine in a room that literal bugs got into and got the term software bug named after them. Over time, it shrunk to the desktop computer. And if you're a millennial or older, you grew up in a house with probably only one desktop with the login and all that sort of thing to the internet. Over time, you get laptops. Now you can carry that around. Eventually, we all got smartphones, which is crazy when you consider less than 100 years ago, computers didn't even really exist like that. Then you get the smartphone to the smartwatch. The right hand, to where now you're walking around with something that's monitoring you. You can call people with all sorts of crazy stuff, right? And then you're getting these smart glasses like Meta and Ray-Ban and all these other ones where they're trying to get it closer and closer and closer. And here's the thing. It doesn't even have to be that the technology itself is getting that much more advanced and that much closer to the body. I mean, obviously with Neuralink, they really trying to put it in our brains. But it's not just that. It's also the fact that we can't live without it these days. That's one of the things with the mark of the beast. It's talking about you can't buy or sell in the market without it. And now you could be like, oh, Eddie, but we don't got something like a chip implanted in our wrist or on our forehead to do this and do that. Well, we kind of do just in practice because at least for my job, I can't work without a computer. I can't work without the internet. These days, it's almost like I can't work without AI. And so many things are moving digital. I don't want to get too crazy conspiratorial here, but honestly, with COVID, we really saw that you can shut the whole world down and put it online. Banking's online, cryptocurrency. When was the last time you touched cold hard cash? There's a lot of places that don't even take cash right now. So it's not just that the technology is getting smaller and more efficient and getting closer to our bodies, which it is. It's also the fact that we just can't live without it. So as we get near the end of all of this discourse on this hot take, I want to slow it down real fast to, do my due diligence from a biblical point of view. So as we're talking about the mark of the beast and all this stuff, obviously I've kind of said, all right, there's a good chance that this is technological. And I mean, at this point, I'm kind of convinced it really might be. But I want to pump the brakes just to remind us that, remember, the Bible likes to sample itself. So the mark of the beast is really calling back to something at the very early part of the Old Testament from Deuteronomy. So Deuteronomy 6, which is often called the Shema, because that is the Hebrew word for hear, for listen. We're going to read this verse and think about what it's really trying to say about how someone is marked, about how someone shows the ethos of the life that they're about. Tune into this for a second. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So if you notice, we got the hand and the eyes, aka the forehead, going on here. That's because Revelation is directly sampling this verse from Deuteronomy, the Shema. So the Shema here in Deuteronomy 6 is basically saying your whole life should be marked by being a child of God. Everything you do, everywhere you go, you should be about that life. And so the mark of the beast is a subversion of this. It's the antithesis of this. It is everywhere you go, everything you do, you're marked by the oppressive kingdoms of the world. And here's the thing. I don't know that we all walk around and say, here's who I'm going to be today. Here's what I'm going to be about in terms of these competing kingdoms. But that's just the thing. If you're not careful, you may be getting swept up into the wrong one and not even know it. So my caution here is check yourself. Who are you really repping when you do what you do? What are you just accepting because everyone else is doing versus what are you doing because you really feel like that's what you want to be about? Think about that. So the moral of the story is be careful what you consent to. Read them terms and conditions. Like I said before, I wanted to end this on a note of hope. Our hope ultimately isn't in this life because for whatever reason there's still powers and principalities that are fighting against us here. We're waiting on entropy to be undone and moral degradation to be undone. We're waiting on consciousness to be fixed so we don't even think about sinning. Our outer selves might be wasting away, but our inner selves are being renewed day by day. Remember, Jesus is cleansing the inside so that we're good when he recreates the outside. There won't be male, female, Greek, or Jew. There won't be all this tribalism and divisiveness. We'll all be one people who can truly live by the law of love. One day we're going to get uploaded to the new heavens and the new earth. We will run and not grow weary. There'll be no death, no sadness. The lion will lay with the lamb and the child can put its hand in the viper's pit and not get bit. But we got to get the inner right first. Just fixing the outside won't fix the inside. It's the Mobius strip of the inner and outer connected through Jesus and the work he did on the cross. He's resurrected and he gives us that same hope. Only Jesus can pass through the barriers. Only the Lamb can open the scroll. And remember, in the meantime, he said, abide in me, which means remain in me. We're the body of Christ, the singular body, and the church is his vessel now while he's in heaven preparing a place for us. So our role is to let the Spirit live in us, to not quench the Spirit. Jesus is still on earth, just in the form of the church. So we got to keep our start status on crispy. And remember, it's about what he did, not what we do. But we do what we do because of what he did. So I'm going to wrap it up with this. How could you lose when you follow God? Thanks for tuning in. I'm Eddie Canyon, and this has been Form Devoid. See y'all next time.